Estás viendo Canal América, televisión dominicana para el mundo.
A Time for Truth show is sponsored by the Office of Dr. Bernard Fialkoff, a periodontal, dental implant and laser specialist in New York City, for over 40 years. Dr. Fialkoff was honored by the International College of Dentists and Pierre Fauchard, and received the Presidential Lifetime Humanitarian Honor from the White House. Call us at 718-229-3838.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got, but the world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your fears.
Welcome to A Time for Truth show. I'm your host, Dr. Bernard Fialkoff. It's a pleasure to be back with you again. This time of year is so wonderful with the blossoms and the trees just starting to grow, life being reborn, springtime. And it shows us how much we have in life. And it really brings to mind that the miracle that we need to protect as a family, as a human family, because we get so much satisfaction, love, nutrition, health, well-being that comes from nature. And May 16th, our program, A Time for Truth, is sponsoring at the United Nations a Time for Truth Global Conference at the New York City United Nations headquarters, 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. World leaders will be gathering and speaking. Why? Because at the same time that we're in spring, we have to realize that in America, and really all over the world, but let's look at some American statistics because this is a show that hits America. We're unhappy. How do I know we're unhappy? 76 million Americans on a form of psychotropic drug. 76 million. When I think of that figure, I cannot even fathom the concept. About 178,000 Americans die of alcohol-related deaths each year. 178,000. If you look at the Vietnam War, in 10 years we lost 58,000. And now in 1 year, we're losing 178,000 from alcohol. First marriages are dissolving at a rate of almost 50%. Almost 1 in 2 marriages divorcing. And so we have to look and we say, well, how can that continue forward? How can we allow that to continue forward? What do we need to do? And that's really why our group has founded and has done this for so many years now at the United Nations, an annual conference, always on some topic that's important to our society. We've had for the last few years on drugs, because drugs have been ravaging, and drugs themselves in 2023 caused 113,000 American deaths. Staggering. Way, way too high. And so, engineer, if you will, let's put up the slides of our global Time for Truth conference is May 16th. And let's let our viewers know what we'll be doing, what's going to be happening. And here you go. Here's the brochure. You see with the sun rising, the sun signifying rebirth. Because why? Because if we look at today's world, we've been beset by a loss of morality, a loss of brotherhood, a loss of communication. At the same time, we've had increased artificial intelligence, increased technological developments. And we look at that, and does it need to be that way? I don't really think that the AI and the technological developments are the problem. No. We need to take a look at why is this happening? Because obviously we realize that fundamental human rights and religious freedom gives us that nurturing and gives us that basis, and it exerts a civilizing influence. I mean, really, if you look at it, why is it that man developed this so many years ago? If you look originally as caveman, we had impulses, and we were individuals. We had an impulse to kill because we had to eat. We had an impulse to grab and take. But then we formed societies, communities, and we worked collaboratively, and existence became easier. Survival became easier. And so we realized that religious freedom, human rights, and education are all interrelated and so important in sustainable international, not national, but international peace. And that really, if we look at this, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was, delivered at the United Nations in 1948, basically espoused in Article 18 religious freedom. And in that article, it stated that every one of us has a right to the freedom of our thought, of our conscience, of our belief, and our religion. And that this right includes the ability to change your belief and the freedom, whether it be by yourself or in a group, in a church, in a mosque, in a synagogue, in a temple, whatever religion you follow, whatever belief in a higher entity you have, your ability and your freedom to manifest that and to worship and to practice and observe as you deem as an American citizen. In fact, the International Covenant of Civil and Political Rights of 1966 and the UN General Assembly's Declaration on the elimination of all forms of intolerance and discrimination based on religious or belief of 1981 both reinforced what we're talking about. The ability to be comfortable and to realize that you're not going to be attacked because of your religion. But look at what our world is suffering from, and look at the wars we're beset by, and we see that it's not being implemented. Let's go to the next slide, engineer. And we see that we're beset by conflict based on intolerance. And this is basically, if you would like to attend, the email you would write to Atimefortruthfoundation at gmail.com. And there's no entry fee. And the United Nations is not a commercial entity. It's there for us. It's there to condone positive survival, community, international prosperity, collaboration. Let's go on to the next image, and we'll start getting into the participants who have participated. Obviously, I want to acknowledge my wife, Maria, for her support. Really, I would think any husband, any father, any man would do likewise. Our partners give us so much stability, and they're amazing. So I'm very lucky to be with her. And there you see all the different dignitaries from the Caribbean, from locally here in the New York area. Too many to name the names, but some that I'll mention. President Ali Gedikoglu, who our Time for Truth show and Time for Truth Foundation have worked with, delivering justice, equality, and peace from Turkey, from the country of Turkey. And then you see Dr. Hong Taozi, the founder and president of the Foundation of World Peace and Love. Both of them will be not only at this one, but were in all previous conventions at the UN. Dr. Hong has a beautiful dance group that will be performing on our Saturday basketball event in Queens. And it's a wonderful group. He's bringing a bell of peace. And this bell of peace signifies universal freedom for all of us on the planet. Dr. Hong has taken this to many leaders, presidents, prime ministers, and part of the conference. There's been so many. One that you see on the bottom left, before he became sheriff in New York City, my friend Sheriff Anthony Miranda, who's always participated when we did drug education, when we did human rights education. He's always been a very strong proponent, and he's in a very, just position that he deserves for all the years that he's done so much. Let's go on, engineer, and we'll go on to more. There you see, probably you say, what is a boxer doing there? Well, Manny Pacquiao, world champion in 8 different classes, never been repeated, is a tremendous humanitarian. And he's actually Senator Pacquiao in Philippines. And he has participated. He participated last year. He's participating this year because of his experiences as a young man with poverty, with not really having enough substance, nutrition, and how his family survived. He's never forgotten, which I think is a great role model for anyone watching this show, is to realize that we have to give back. If you see what our planet is suffering from is too much for me, too much about how I can control, how I can make income. But really, what wealth do we have if we're destroying our culture? And where does this come from? Let's go to the next slide as I'm talking. By the way, there on the lower left, you have Jerry DeTagle, Datu Jerry DeTagle. And on the lower right, you have RFK, who's doing an unbelievable job with Health and Human Services, really educating our country on sound nutrition, something that our country, I know as a doctor, we've gone away from. For so many years, I thought that, and we finally have someone in our country with enough courage to stand up to different corporations and say, no, that's enough. The healthy American people is suffering. The mental state of the people is suffering. And he's brought out some amazing scientific data that I should mention to you, because our stomach actually is responsible for something called serotonin. What is serotonin? Well, serotonin is something that regulates your mood along with other factors in your body. But when your nutrition and the microbiota, the organisms, the gut bacteria go out of control, the serotonin production changes, and the person can get anxious, can get stressed. Not because they have something in the environment, but because of their food. So we really have to laud Secretary Kennedy for bringing this point out that I think most Americans had no idea. And next to him is a religious leader, Pastor Ben Graham, whose family has always been in religion, always helping people to move forward. And he also will be at the conference speaking, because this is really about all of us. It's not about one creed. It's not about one belief system, one faith. It's not about one race. You know, I think most of you realize I was born in Cuba. And maybe I'm a little prejudicial to being a Cuban American. I actually love Cuba. I love America. And so one of the interesting things about Cuba and America is our countries are like the United Nations. And Cubans came in all different sizes, religions, colors, and creeds as we do in America. And really the beauty is how we all are coexisting. So let's go on to the next slide. There we go. And here we have more leaders from all across the globe. The World Conference of Mayors on the upper left. A Japanese attorney fighting for religious freedom in Japan, Tatsu Nakayama. My good friends from Nigeria on the bottom. We spoke at the Washington, D.C. International Religious Freedom Conference, where so much was brought out and actually gave so many ideas for this UN conference that we're going to be having in May. And something important to realize is that according to the Cambridge University Press, approximately 90% of the world's nations' constitutions guarantee religious freedom. But what was very interesting, that the Pew Research Center reported that the actual enjoyment of that supposed guaranteed religious freedom was declining globally, and that 3/4 of the world's population were living under a regime that didn't allow their religious freedom. And you say, well, that can't be because it was written, it's in the constitutions. And this is why it's so important that we have meetings like this, shows like this, because we need to really fight for our freedoms. There's a saying that, you know, freedom is not something that's guaranteed. Freedom takes constant being willing to look, to see, to examine, to investigate, and constantly to speak out, not to stay quiet, not to let things be as they are. Because it's like when I was a young guy, I wanted to do certain things, and my parents were there to exert discipline. If they hadn't, there would have been no discipline. So at times, I think in our world, we've become too complacent, and we need to exert a little discipline. Let's go to the next slide so we can put more pictures of the leaders. There have been so many. There you have a good friend of mine from the Dominican Republic, actually two of them. Rafael Guerrero Peralta, who was the director of the Council on Drugs in the Dominican Republic, great man. And the Dr. Esther Pena next to him from the Dominican Republic, one of my fellow dental colleagues who came and participated. On the upper picture, you see someone who really fights constantly for health care, Dr. Ramon Talaj. He directs Somos Medical Care. He gives support to so many organizations. Dr. Talaj, who's right now in Italy because of what happened with the Pope dying, constantly is helping the world, constantly is pushing education, constantly is pushing religious freedom, influence. We really have to laud him. He's also been involved. You see so many. Let's go on to the next picture, engineer. And we'll show more of the participants. There you see on the upper right, Salwa, and wonderful woman, Salwa Kader. Salwa runs a human rights group and very involved at the United Nations. Her husband, Ralph, is at a very high executive level in that organization. Beautiful people who are there for us, who fight for us. But, you know, we need to support each other. It's not just one or two people going to carry the world on their backs. And so that's why this conference is bringing people on May 16th from all over the globe, from all different religions. We have rabbis, we have Hindus, we have priests of all different Christian faiths. You know, we have Jews, we have, as I am, we have Catholics as my wife, we have all the different religions, because that's what really makes our world the world that it is. So there you see others there, and you see the gathering and how many people turned out internationally. But we have to fight for this, because as I told you, the Pew Research Center had commented that so many were not allowed to practice their religion guaranteed by their constitutions. And who you were saying, well, who are the primary violators of this? Well, communist states, approximately 3/4 of the Muslim majority states, the nationalist states such as India, and non-state agencies too, such as terrorists and other groups that really have bigotry and cause tremendous prejudice, anti-Semitism, anti-Arab sentiments, anti-African American sentiments. Really, there's no anti-indigenous Indian sentiments. Really, we've suffered for this from humanity. I think it's time that we reach the same level in humanity and tolerance as we've reached with AI. We need to concentrate not just on technology, but humanity. Why do I say that to you? Because the Surgeon General of the United States of America found that our physical health was being affected by our social interaction. And the Surgeon General of the country, the United States of America, did epidemiological scientific studies to see if scientifically what we thought religiously was really true. And he found that to be a fact scientifically. And he found that during COVID, because of the isolation, because of the lack of contact with another human being, even though we spoke to them on cell phones, people were getting sick, physically sick, not just mentally sick. That's very understandable. Isolation causes depression, but physically sick. And he found that it caused heart disease, diabetes, stroke, premature death, and that actually during COVID, because of the isolation, marijuana use went up 50% globally. 50%. Alcohol use went up about 43% globally. Totally showing us, and I want to pause so you could actually take that in, totally demonstrating the importance of humanity, the importance of what we feel when we're with each other at a wedding. We have that great feeling, or a sporting event and our team wins, or we're with our friends, or we go out and have a good dinner with our family, or our community events, all of our religious events, really all of them, where we feel what we feel inside, but now we know that medically and scientifically is true. Something else that we should bring out, because it's the year of quantum in the UN 2025, the year of quantum science, quantum physics. And there's a very interesting discovery that we need to mention on the show. That's a scientific discovery. It's called entanglement. Entanglement. What is entanglement? Entanglement is where two particles originally start out together, whatever they are. And these two physical particles then are separated. And by being separated, you would think, well, they would go out of communication. But this is what's so interesting in terms of what was found with these scientific studies and discoveries of entanglement, is that the entanglement seems to show that even though separated by light years, that what happened with one particle was experienced by the other particle. And you go, wow. And they realized also and stated that this was the physical structure of the universe. Well, when you look at it really, if you think about when the disaster of 9/11 occurred in New York City, It was felt around the world. There was like a gloom that occurred. There was a sadness that occurred. We never really looked at, well, how is that possible? Because we didn't see the people, we didn't touch the people, but yet you felt that over the globe. And it's very interesting if we take the discovery in physics of entanglement, and that these particles communicate even light years away. If we take the Surgeon General's statement of the importance of social interaction to being physically healthy as well as mentally healthy. And one more thing I should mention, the Surgeon General went on to say that the community problems that we're fighting, those community problems of violence, of drugs, of homelessness, were also caused by the same social isolation, lack of conduct one with the other, collaboration one with the other, communication one with the other. Amazing, because since we were little kids, probably we were taught that, but we thought it was just our parents trying to teach us to be good human beings. And now we realize, it's very interesting, that being good human beings equates with being healthy human beings scientifically, equates with global prosperity, because what prosperity can exist if human beings don't collaborate? Since we really are the ones producing everything. And maybe this can be applied in Haiti. And again, we go back to our global Time for Truth conference at the UN. Let's go on to the next slide, Buddha. And that exactly is the purpose of this conference. We'll be showing you excerpts in future shows once it happens. This is Dr. Hong's dance group, Fopal, beautiful group, will be performing at the basketball game in Queens on Saturday, May 17th. Go on at 2 p.m. And I want to mention Solomon Frederick, Dean Solomon Frederick, the dean of the school, and Principal Hensley, for their cooperation, and the city of New York for allowing us to be at that school and have this beautiful humanitarian community awareness event. Let's go to the next slide, and we'll have a group of acrobats, chosen crew, led by Ryan Beato, its founder. There you see him. And he's also going to be performing at the basketball game and be president of the UN as well as the others. Let's go on to the next slide, please. And I'll show you more. And this is Martin Luther King and his quote that when we begin to ignore the things we see in our lives are the days we start to die. And Kennedy, John F. Kennedy, with his famous quote, that a man may die, nations may rise and fall, but an idea goes on into the future. Go on to the next slide. And at the UN, this May 16th, these ideas will go out. And on May 17th, in a community event, in a basketball game, they'll go into action, where two teams will play each other, but not to beat each other, but to raise awareness for the wonderful beauty of life and communities, and the UN goal of sustainable communities and cities, which lead to a sustainable planet, which leads to a good environment, which leads to cooperation, collaboration. Let's see that the world conflicts start to diminish and disappear and become a thing of history books. Let's go on to the next slide. I think we reached the end of our presentation. And this is the last one. So it's appropriate that we end on this one. And we invite you all, but let's not wait till May 16th. There's no reason to wait. We can start today. You have all the information you need in your hands. Be who you are. Take control of your life. Your instincts will always be good. Let's work together. Let's make this 2025, which the UN declared the International Year of Quantum, but let the quantum be not a physical energy, but a quantum of human collaboration, a quantum of positive energy, a quantum of empathy, one for the other, of intuition that spreads positive environment. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Once we finish the conferences on that weekend, we're going to have interviews with some of the special international guests that we have from all over the globe. And we will let you know what transpired and what will go forward after that UN conference. It's always a pleasure to be with you. And I welcome you to subscribe on YouTube, A Time for Truth Show, and become part of our membership. The goal is a world of truth, a world of peace and collaboration, a world of prosperity, where we can have games, we can have competition, but it can end in a positive way. I hope you've enjoyed the show. Until next time, have a very good night. We'll look at you on the next episode of A Time for Truth Show. Be well.
This show was sponsored by A Time for Truth Foundation Incorporated as a community service.
Sometimes life can be so damn hard. You don't know where to go. Everything keeps falling apart. Yeah. You try to do your best, but only God knows that you've given everything you've got. The world takes you down. You just keep moving on. Let your feet